The stars look different from this far out. Captain Jake Morrison pressed his face against the cold window of the ship's observation deck and watched the alien sun grow larger. 3 months they had been traveling through space to reach this place. 3 months of cramped quarters, recycled air, and the constant hum of the ship's engines behind him. The other humans on the mission were getting ready for what would be the most important day of their lives. Dr. Lisa Bennett was checking her scientific equipment for the 100th time. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a tight ponytail, and her blue eyes showed the kind of focus that came from years of studying alien life forms. She had volunteered for this mission because she wanted to understand how life worked on other worlds. The ship they rode in was called the Meridian. It was not the biggest human ship, but it was fast and had room for the small team Earth had sent. The metal walls were painted white, and the floors were covered with gray carpet that had seen better days. Everything smelled like cleaning chemicals and coffee. It felt like home to Jake, who had spent most of his adult life on ships like this. But the Meridian was not carrying only humans. Down in the lower decks, 3 different kinds of aliens were also preparing for the mission. Jake had met them all when they started the journey, but he still felt strange when he talked to them. They looked so different from anything on Earth. The Zelthani were the easiest to understand. They looked like people made of living crystal. Their bodies were clear and hard, and light seemed to move through them in patterns. Commander Vex was their leader, and he stood almost 7 feet tall. When he talked, his voice sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. But Jake could tell that Vex did not think much of humans. The way he looked at them suggested he thought they were weak and soft. The Kithra were harder to look at. They were like giant insects with 6 arms and large compound eyes that reflected light in rainbow colors. Their leader was called Hive Speaker Zix, and when she talked it sounded like many voices speaking at once. She moved in quick, jerky motions that made Jake think of a praying mantis he had seen as a child. The Kithara lived in groups where everyone thought together, which made them very smart but also very strange to humans. The third group was the smallest. Only 2 of them had come on this trip. They were called the Morphians, and they could change their shape. Most of the time they looked like tall, thin people with gray skin, but Jake had seen one of them turn into something that looked like a bird. They did not talk much, and when they did, their voices had no emotion at all. All of these aliens were here for the same reason as the humans. They wanted to make friends with the Zarian Collective, a group of aliens who controlled several star systems. The Zarians were old and powerful, and they had technology that could help everyone. But they were also very particular about who they would work with. Jake walked away from the window and headed toward the bridge of the ship. The hallways were narrow, and he had to duck under pipes and cables that ran along the ceiling. His boots made soft thumping sounds on the metal floor. As he walked, he thought about what he knew about the Zarians. They were warriors. Everything they did was about being strong and proving yourself in combat. When new species wanted to join their group, they had to pass a test. The test was simple but dangerous. 1 person from each species would have to fight one of the creatures from the Zarian homeworld. If they won, their people would be accepted. If they lost, they would probably die. Jake was going to be the one who would take the test for humanity. He had been chosen because he was strong and smart, and because he had experience fighting in difficult situations. But he was also nervous. The creatures on the Zarian world were supposed to be the most dangerous predators in the galaxy. They had evolved over millions of years to be perfect killing machines. The bridge was small and crowded, with computer screens and blinking lights. Lieutenant Sam Parker was at the pilot's seat, his hands moving over the controls with practiced ease. Sam was young, maybe 25, with red hair and freckles that made him look even younger. He had been flying ships since he was 18, and Jake trusted him completely. "How much longer?" Jake asked. "About 6 hours until we reach the planet," Sam said without looking up from his instruments. "The Zarians have given us permission to land at their main spaceport. From there, we'll be taken to the testing grounds." Jake nodded and looked at the main screen, which showed the planet they were approaching. Zarian Prime was a world of green, and brown with white clouds swirling around it. It looked peaceful from space, but Jake knew that appearances could be deceiving. The surface was covered with thick forests and deep canyons, all filled with creatures that had spent millions of years learning how to kill. Dr. Bennett came onto the bridge carrying a tablet computer. She looked excited, which was how she always looked when she was about to see something new. "I've been reading the reports about the planet's ecosystem," she said. "The biodiversity is incredible. There are over 10,000 different species of predators, and they all have different hunting strategies." "Great," Jake said. "That makes me feel much better." Lisa smiled. "Sorry, I know you're nervous. But this is amazing from a scientific perspective. The Xerians have basically created a world where only the strongest and smartest creatures survive. It's like a laboratory for evolution." "And I'm going to be the lab rat," Jake said. "You'll be fine," Lisa said, but Jake could hear the worry in her voice. "You've trained for this. You know how to handle yourself in a fight." Jake had trained for this, but he wondered if it would be enough. On Earth, he had been a soldier for 10 years before becoming a ship captain. He had learned to fight with guns and knives and his bare hands. He had fought in wars and survived situations that would have killed most people. But he had never fought anything like what was waiting for him on Xerion Prime. The ship's communication system crackled to life. It was Commander Vex speaking in his musical voice. "Captain Morrison, please report to the conference room. We need to discuss the procedures for the trial," Jake sighed. He had already heard about the procedures dozens of times, but the aliens seemed to like talking about them. He left the bridge and made his way to the conference room, which was the largest space on the ship. It had a long table surrounded by chairs and pictures of Earth on the walls. The aliens were already there when he arrived. Commander Vex stood at one end of the table, his crystal body reflecting the room's lights. Hive Speaker Zix sat in a specially designed chair that could support her insect-like body. The two Morphians stood against the wall, their gray faces showing no expression. "The trial will begin tomorrow morning," Vex said as Jake sat down. "You will be taken to the arena and presented to the Xerian Council. They will explain the rules and introduce you to your opponent." "What kind of creature will I be fighting?" Jake asked. "That is not known until the moment of the trial," Zix said in her many-voiced way of speaking. "The Xerians choose based on what they think will be the greatest challenge for each individual." One of the Morphians stepped forward. "Previous challengers have faced different creatures. Some fought massive beasts with claws and teeth. Others fought smaller, faster creatures with poison. Many have faced creatures that can change their appearance or become invisible." "How many have survived?" Jake asked. The room became quiet. Finally, Vex spoke. "In the last 100 years, perhaps 1 in 10. Jake felt his stomach drop. He had known the odds were bad, but hearing it said out loud made it real. "And if I lose? Then humanity will not be welcome in the Xerian collective," Vex said. "Your species will remain isolated, cut off from the greater galactic community." "No pressure," Jake muttered. The meeting continued for another hour, but Jake barely listened. His mind was focused on what would happen tomorrow. Somewhere on the planet below, a creature was waiting for him. It had been born and raised to kill, and it had probably never lost a fight. He was going to face it with nothing but his hands. And whatever he could figure out in the moment, when the meeting ended, Jake returned to his quarters. The room was small, with just a bed, a desk, and a small window. He lay down on the bed and stared at the ceiling. In a few hours he would either prove that humanity belonged among the stars, or he would die trying. Either way, tomorrow would change everything. The morning air on Xerion Prime was thick and hot. Jake stepped off the transport ship and felt the alien atmosphere fill his lungs. It tasted different from Earth air, with a metallic tang that made his nose wrinkle. The sky above was orange instead of blue, and 2 suns hung low on the horizon, casting everything in a strange golden light around him. The other members of the mission were also getting their first look at the Xerian world. Dr. Lisa Bennett was already taking readings with her scientific instruments, her eyes wide with excitement. The alien delegates moved more carefully, as if they were also nervous about what was to come. Their Zarian escorts were waiting for them. Jake had never seen a Zarian in person before, only in pictures and videos. They were impressive creatures, standing almost 8 feet tall with 6 arms and bodies covered in bronze-colored armor plates. Their faces were long and narrow, with large, dark eyes that seemed to see everything. When they moved, their armor made soft clicking sounds. The lead Zarian stepped forward and spoke in perfect English. "Welcome to Zarian Prime. I am War Leader Kethver. You will follow me to the arena." The group climbed into large vehicles that looked like armored buses. Jake sat near a window and watched the alien landscape roll by. The planet was beautiful, in a dangerous way. Huge trees stretched up toward the sky, their leaves so dark they were almost black. Between the trees, he could see movement, creatures that stayed hidden in the shadows. Every now and then, something would dart across the road in front of their vehicle, too fast to get a good look at. "The ecosystem here is fascinating," Lisa whispered to him. "Every plant and animal has evolved to be either a predator or to hide from predators. There's no middle ground." "Comforting," Jake said, though he was actually paying attention to everything she said. The more he understood about this world, the better his chances of surviving what was coming. Commander Vex was sitting across from them, his crystal body reflecting the orange light from outside. "I have studied the records of previous trials," he said in his musical voice. "The Zarians do not simply test physical strength. They test intelligence, adaptability, and the will to survive." "What does that mean?" Jake asked. "It means the creature you face will not be random," Vex explained. "They will choose something that challenges you specifically. They study their guests before the trial begins." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. That meant the Zarians had been watching him, learning about him, trying to figure out what kind of opponent would give him the most trouble. He wondered what they had seen when they looked at him. The vehicle stopped at the edge of a massive crater in the ground. It was so big that Jake could not see the other side. The walls of the crater were carved with steps, creating a giant amphitheater that could hold thousands of spectators. At the bottom was a flat area about the size of a football field, surrounded by tall walls. "The Arena of Judgment," War Leader Kethver announced. "It has been here for over 1,000 years. Every species that has joined the Zarian Collective has proven themselves in this place." Jake followed the others down the carved steps. The stone was smooth and worn from centuries of use. As they descended, he could see Zarians filling the seats around them. There were thousands of them, all watching with their dark eyes. The sound of their voices created a low humming that seemed to vibrate through the stone dot at the bottom of the amphitheater. There was a platform where the important Zarians sat. In the center was a chair that looked like it was made from the bones of some enormous creature. Sitting in that chair was the largest Zarian Jake had ever seen. His armor was not bronze like the others, but a deep red that seemed to glow in the strange light. "High Chancellor Morthuk," Kethver said quietly. "He is the leader of our people, and he will judge your trial." The human delegation was led to a raised platform on one side of the arena. The alien delegates were given their own platform on the other side. Jake found himself standing at the edge of the platform, looking down at the empty arena floor. Soon, he would be down there, fighting for his life and for humanity's future. Dr. Bennett stood next to him. "Are you ready?" she asked. Jake looked at her and tried to smile. "As ready as I can be." High Chancellor Morthuk stood up from his throne. When he spoke, his voice was so deep that Jake could feel it in his chest. The words were in the Zarian language, but translation devices allowed everyone to understand. "Today, we test a new species," the Chancellor said. "The humans of Earth have requested to join the collective. They say they are strong and worthy of our alliance. Today, we will see if this is true." The crowd of Zarians began to cheer, a sound like thunder rolling across the arena. Jake felt his heart start to beat faster. This was really happening. "The human champion will face judgment alone," the Chancellor continued. "As is our tradition, he will carry no weapons and wear no armor. He will face our champion with nothing but his own strength and will." Jake began to remove his jacket and boots, stripping down to just his pants and shirt. The air in the arena was hot, and he could already feel sweat starting to form on his forehead. He looked up at Dr. Bennett one more time, then at the alien. Delegates watching from their platform. Commander Vex was leaning forward, his crystal body glowing brighter with what Jake assumed was nervousness. Hive Speaker Zix was completely still, her compound eyes reflecting the arena lights. The Morphians stood like statues, showing no emotion at all. "Jake Morrison of Earth," the Chancellor called out. "Enter the arena." Jake walked down a narrow staircase that led from the platform to the arena floor. Each step echoed in the sudden silence. The crowd had stopped cheering, and now thousands of aliens were watching him in complete quiet. He could hear his own heartbeat and the sound of his breathing. The arena floor was covered in sand that had been stained dark by countless battles. Jake walked to the center and stood there, waiting. He tried to remember everything he had learned. About fighting, about staying calm under pressure, about reading an opponent's movements. High Chancellor Morthok raised one of his 6 arms. "Bring forth our champion." A gate opened on the far side of the arena. At first, Jake could not see anything in the darkness beyond the gate. Then, slowly, something began to move. The creature that emerged was unlike anything Jake had ever seen. It was huge, at least 12 feet tall, with a body that seemed to be made of shadow and muscle. Its hide was dark gray, almost black, with patches of skin that glowed with a soft blue light. The glow pulsed like a heartbeat, faster when the creature moved, slower when it stood still. The creature had 4 legs, each ending in claws that looked like they could cut through steel. Its head was long and narrow, with a mouthful of teeth that glowed the same blue as its skin patches. But it was the eyes that made Jake's blood run cold. They were intelligent eyes, not the eyes of a simple beast, but the eyes of something that could think and plan. "The Void Stalker," the Chancellor announced. "Born in the deep caves of our world, where only the strongest survive. It has never been defeated in single combat." The creature began to move across the arena floor, its steps making no sound on the sand. It moved like liquid shadow, flowing rather than walking. Jake could see it studying him, those intelligent eyes taking in every detail of his appearance and posture. Jake forced himself to breathe slowly and steadily. He had faced dangerous opponents before, but nothing like this. The creature was bigger than him, stronger than him, and probably faster than him. But he had something it did not have. He had trained to fight thinking opponents, not just wild animals. The Void Stalker stopped about 30 feet away from Jake and crouched down, its muscles tensing. Jake could see the blue patches on its skin pulsing faster now, and he realized they were probably connected to its emotions or physical state. That might be useful information. High Chancellor Morthok stood up again. "The trial begins when the champion calls out. It ends when one fighter cannot continue, or when one surrenders." "There are no other rules?" Jake looked up at the thousands of Xerians watching him. He looked at his friends on their platform, at the alien delegates who had doubted humanity's strength. Then he looked back at the Void Stalker. "I'm ready," he called out. The Chancellor nodded. "Then let judgment begin." The Void Stalker's blue patches flared bright, and it began to move toward Jake. The crowd held its breath. The trial had begun. The Void Stalker moved like death itself. Jake watched as the creature began to circle him, its 4 legs carrying it in a smooth, predatory glide across the arena sand. The blue patches on its skin pulsed in a steady rhythm, and Jake realized they were like a heartbeat he could see. Right now, that heartbeat was calm and controlled. Jake turned slowly, keeping the creature in front of him. He had learned a long time ago that the worst thing you could do in a fight was let your opponent get behind you. The Void Stalker seemed to understand this too, because it kept moving, never staying in one place for more than a few seconds. Up in the stands, thousands of Xerians watched in complete silence. Jake could feel their eyes on him, judging every move he made. On the platform where his friends waited, Dr. Lisa Bennett gripped the railing with white knuckles. She had studied alien creatures for years, but she had never seen anything like this. Commander Vex leaned forward, his crystal body glowing with tension. "The human is staying calm," he said to his aide. That is good. Fear makes creatures like this more aggressive. He is still going to lose, the aide replied. No one has ever defeated a Void Stalker in single combat. On the other platform, Hive Speaker Zix was perfectly still, but her compound eyes followed every movement in the arena. The Morphians stood like statues, showing no emotion at all. They had seen many species fail this test before the Void Stalker suddenly stopped moving. It crouched low, its muscles tensing, and the blue patches on its skin began to pulse faster. Jake recognized the signs. The creature was getting ready to attack. Jake had maybe 3 seconds to prepare. He spread his feet apart and lowered his center of gravity, the way he had been taught in combat training. He kept his hands loose and ready. Most importantly, he kept his eyes on the creature's shoulders and hips, not on its glowing patches or its terrible teeth. The body would tell him which way it was going to move. The Void Stalker launched itself forward with explosive speed. It covered the 30 feet between them in less than 2 seconds, its claws extended and its mouth open wide. Jake could see rows of sharp teeth, each one as long as his finger, but Jake did not try to run or dodge away. Instead, he did something that shocked everyone watching. He stepped forward, moving toward the creature instead of away from it, the Void Stalkers. Claws whistled through the air where Jake's head had been a moment before. But Jake was no longer there. He had dropped low and moved to the side, letting the creature's own momentum carry it past him. As it went by, he drove his elbow hard into the joint where one of its back legs connected to its body. The creature stumbled and rolled, sand flying everywhere. It came up quickly, turning to face Jake again. But now there was something different in its eyes. Surprise. It had never had prey move toward it before. Jake backed away, giving himself room to think. The elbow strike had worked, but it had not done much damage. The creature's hide was thick and tough, like armor. He would need to find weak spots if he wanted to hurt it. The Void Stalker shook itself and began to circle again, but this time it moved more carefully. It was learning, Jake realized. This was not just a dumb animal. It was smart enough to change its tactics. Incredible, Dr. Bennett whispered from the platform. He actually landed a hit. Commander Vex's crystal body was glowing brighter now. How did he know to move forward instead of backward? High Chancellor Morthok was also watching with interest. In all his years, he had never seen a challenger use such a strategy. Most creatures, when faced with a charging predator, tried to run or dodge. This human had done the opposite. Jake was studying the creature as it moved. He noticed that it favored its right front leg slightly, putting more weight on the other 3. That might be a weakness he could use. He also noticed that the blue patches on its skin were not just random. They seemed to be connected to its emotional state and physical condition. The Void Stalker attacked again, but this time it was more careful. It came in low, trying to use its claws to slash at Jake's legs. Jake jumped back, but not far enough. One claw caught the fabric of his pants, tearing it but not reaching skin. Jake grabbed the creature's extended leg and twisted, trying to throw it off balance. But the Void Stalker was too strong. It pulled free and backhanded Jake with one of its other legs, sending him rolling across the sand. Jake came up spitting sand and tasting blood. The creature's claws had left shallow cuts on his shoulder. He could feel warm blood running down his arm, but the wounds were not deep. He had been lucky. The crowd of Xyrians began to murmur among themselves. Most had expected the human to be dead by now. The fact that he was still standing, still fighting, was more than they had seen from most challengers. The Void Stalker circled again, but now Jake could see that it was breathing harder. The blue patches on its skin were pulsing faster, and there was a slight tremor in its movements. It was getting tired, or maybe frustrated. Jake realized something important. The creature had probably never had to fight for this long before. Most of its prey either died quickly or ran away. It was used to short, violent encounters, not extended battles. This time, when the creature attacked, Jake was ready. He rolled to the side and came up next to the creature's injured leg. He wrapped his arms around it and put all his weight behind. A tackle, driving his shoulder into the joint. The Void Stalker went down hard, its legs tangling as it tried to regain its balance. Jake rolled away before it could grab him, but he had accomplished what he wanted. The creature was now definitely favoring that leg. The arena erupted in noise as the Xerians began to cheer and shout. They had never seen anything like this. The human was not just surviving, he was actually fighting back and doing damage. Jake stood up, breathing hard. His shoulder was bleeding and he had cuts on his arms and legs, but he was still alive. The Void Stalker was also getting back to its feet, but it was moving more slowly now. "He's wearing it down," Lisa said, hardly believing what she was seeing. "He's actually wearing down an apex predator." Commander Vex was glowing so brightly now that his aide had to shield his eyes. "This is impossible. Humans are supposed to be weak." "Maybe we were wrong," the aide said quietly. Jake and the Void Stalker faced each other across the arena. Both were breathing hard, both were wounded, but neither was ready to give up. The creature's blue patches were pulsing rapidly now, and Jake could see intelligence in its eyes. Along with something that might have been respect, the Void Stalker made a sound that was part growl, part roar. It was not the mindless noise of an animal, but something more complex. Jake had the strange feeling that it was trying to communicate with him. "You're not just a killing machine, are you?" Jake said aloud. "You're smart, you can think." The creature tilted its head, as if it was listening. The blue patches on its skin shifted from their rapid pulse to a slower, more steady rhythm. Jake took a careful step forward. "I don't want to kill you," he said, "and I don't think you really want to kill me. You're just doing what they tell you to do." The Void Stalker made another sound, softer this time. It was still crouched and ready to fight, but something in its posture had changed. Up in the stands, the Xerians were watching in amazement. High Chancellor Morthuk leaned forward in his throne. This was not how these trials usually went. Jake took another step forward. "We're both trapped here," he said. "Both of us are putting on a show for them, but maybe we don't have to." The creature's blue patches shifted again, this time to a color Jake had not seen before, a soft green that seemed almost curious. "That's right," Jake said. "We can choose how this ends." The Void Stalker stood up slowly, its massive form towering over Jake. For a moment, it looked like it might attack again. Then, to everyone's amazement, it sat down. The arena fell completely silent. Even the Xerians had stopped talking. No one had ever seen a Void Stalker behave this way before. Jake smiled and sat down too, facing the creature. "Thank you," he said. The trial was not over, but something had changed. The human and the apex predator sat in the arena sand, looking at each other with something that might have been understanding. The silence in the arena was so complete that Jake could hear his own heartbeat. He sat in the sand facing the Void Stalker, both of them breathing hard from their fight. The creature's blue patches had changed to that soft green color, and its eyes were fixed on Jake with an intelligence that made him forget he was looking at an alien predator. High Chancellor Morthuk stood up from his throne, his bronze armor catching the light from the twin suns. "What is happening here?" he demanded. "Why has the trial stopped?" Jake looked up at the Chancellor, then back at the Void Stalker. "We're talking," he said simply. A wave of confused murmurs swept through the crowd of Xerians. In all their history, no one had ever tried to talk to a Void Stalker during a trial. The creatures were meant to be perfect killing machines, not conversation partners. Dr. Lisa Bennett was gripping the railing of the observation platform so tightly her knuckles were white. "This is incredible," she whispered. "He's actually communicating with it." Commander Vex was glowing so brightly now that his crystal body looked like a small star. "This should not be possible," he said to his aide. "Humans are supposed to be a primitive species." On the other platform, Hive Speaker Zix was perfectly still, but her compound eyes were focused entirely on the scene below. The Morphians had moved closer to the edge of their platform, their gray faces showing the first emotion Jake had seen from them. Curiosity. Jake slowly reached out his hand toward the Void Stalker. The creature watched his movement carefully, its head tilting to one side. When Jake's hand was about a foot away, the creature stretched its own head forward until they were almost touching. "You understand me, don't you?" Jake said softly. "You. No, this is all just a show." The Void Stalker made a low sound that was almost like a purr. The blue patches on its skin shifted to a warmer color, something between blue and purple. Jake looked around the arena, at the thousands of Xyrians watching from the stands, at the alien delegates on their platforms, at his friends who had come so far to see this moment. They all expect us to fight until one of us is dead, he said. But we don't have to give them what they expect. The creature's patches shifted again, this time to a deep red. Jake realized it was getting agitated, not at him but at the situation. It was as trapped as he was. You've been doing this for a long time, haven't you? Jake said, fighting in this arena, killing challengers who come here to prove themselves. You probably didn't choose this life. The Void Stalker's head drooped slightly, and Jake saw something in its eyes that looked like sadness. This magnificent creature was not a monster. It was a prisoner, forced to fight for the entertainment of others. High Chancellor Morthok was getting impatient. The trial must continue, he announced. If the human will not fight, then he has failed. Jake stood up slowly, keeping his movements calm and steady. The Void Stalker also rose, its massive form casting a shadow over Jake, but instead of attacking, it moved to stand beside him. I didn't come here to kill, Jake said, his voice carrying across the silent arena. I came here to prove that humans deserve to be part of your community. But I won't prove it by destroying something beautiful. The crowd of Xyrians began to talk among themselves, their voices rising in confusion and anger. This was not how trials were supposed to go. There were rules, traditions that had been followed for thousands of years, but Jake was not finished. He walked over to the Void Stalker and placed his hand on its neck. The creature's skin was warm and surprisingly soft under his touch. This creature is not our enemy, he said. It's a thinking being, just like us. It deserves respect, not slavery. The Void Stalker turned its head to look at Jake, and for a moment their eyes met. Jake saw gratitude there and something else, hope. Dr. Bennett was watching with tears in her eyes. He's not just fighting for humanity, she said. He's fighting for the creature too. Commander Vex was silent for a long moment, his crystal body pulsing with different colors. Finally he spoke. I have never seen anything like this, he said. The human is showing compassion to his opponent. Is that not what warriors do? His aide asked. No, Vex said quietly. That is what leaders do. High Chancellor Morthok was growing angry. This is not acceptable, he said. The trial has rules. If the human will not fight, then he has surrendered. I haven't surrendered, Jake said, his voice strong and clear. I've just chosen to fight. Differently. The Void Stalker moved closer to Jake, and Jake realized the creature was protecting him. If the Xyrians tried to declare him a failure, they would have to get through the apex predator first. You see, Jake said, when you treat someone with respect, they respond with respect. When you offer friendship, you often receive it in return. This creature doesn't want to fight me any more than I want to fight it. The arena was in chaos now. Some Xyrians were shouting for the trial to continue, while others were arguing about what Jake's actions meant. The alien delegates were talking among themselves, trying to understand what they were witnessing, but High Chancellor Morthok was not swayed. The trial must end in combat, he said. That is our law. Jake looked up at the Chancellor, then at the Void Stalker beside him. Then we'll give you combat, he said. But not the kind you expect. Jake stepped away from the Void Stalker and faced it again. But instead of taking a fighting stance, he simply stood there, his arms at his sides. Come on, he said to the creature. Let's finish this, the Void Stalker understood. It moved toward Jake, but not with the killing intent it had shown before. Instead, it moved carefully, almost gently. When it reached Jake, it reared up on its hind legs, towering over him. The crowd gasped, expecting to see Jake crushed. But instead, the creature placed its front paws on Jake's shoulders. Like a giant dog greeting its owner. Jake reached up and scratched the creature behind what he assumed were its ears. The Void Stalker made that purring sound again, and the blue patches on its skin glowed with a warm, peaceful light. This is our combat, Jake said to the watching crowd. Not violence, but understanding, not conquest, but friendship. The arena fell silent again. Even the angriest Xerians had stopped shouting. They were witnessing something that had never happened before in their history. High Chancellor Morthek stared down at the scene, his dark eyes unreadable. For a long moment he said nothing. Then slowly he began to clap, the sound of his applause echoed through the arena. One by one, other Xerians began to clap as well. Soon, the entire amphitheater was filled with the sound of thousands of aliens showing their approval. Commander Vex was glowing so brightly now that he looked like a small sun. Remarkable, he said. The human has won without winning. What do you mean? His aide asked. He has defeated the Void Stalker without defeating it, Vex explained. He has shown strength without showing violence. This is not what we expected from humans. Dr. Bennett was crying openly now. I'm so proud of him, she said. He's shown them what humanity is really capable of. Jake stood in the center of the arena with the Void Stalker, both of them bathed in the orange light of the alien suns. The creature's blue patches were glowing with contentment, and Jake could feel its warm breath on his face. We did it, he whispered to the creature. We found a better way. The Void Stalker nuzzled against Jake's shoulder, and Jake knew that something had changed forever. Not just for him, not just for humanity, but for the creature as well. It was no longer just a weapon in the arena. It was a friend. High Chancellor Morthok raised his hand for silence. The trial is complete, he announced. The human has passed the test. But Jake knew that the real test was just beginning. He had shown the galaxy that humans were capable of more than just fighting. Now he had to prove that they deserved to be part of the greater community of worlds. And with the Void Stalker by his side, he felt ready for whatever came next. High Chancellor Morthek descended from his throne with slow, deliberate steps. His bronze armor caught the light of the twin suns as he walked down the carved stone steps toward the arena floor. Jake had never seen a Xerian move with such ceremony. Before, every step seemed to carry the weight of thousands of years of tradition. The crowd of Xerians in the amphitheater had grown quiet again, watching their leader approach the human and the Void Stalker. Jake could feel their eyes on him, but he was not afraid anymore. The creature beside him seemed to sense his calm, and its blue patches glowed with a steady, peaceful light. When the Chancellor reached the arena floor, he stopped about 10 feet away from Jake and the Void Stalker. For a long moment, he studied them both. Jake noticed that the Chancellor's dark eyes were not angry or disappointed, but filled with something that looked like wonder. In all my years, the Chancellor said, his deep voice carrying across the arena, I have never seen anything like. What happened here today? Jake remained silent, waiting. He had learned that sometimes the best thing to do was listen. The Void Stalker has been our champion for 20 years, the Chancellor continued. It has faced hundreds of challengers from dozens of different species. All of them tried to defeat it through strength or speed or cunning. You are the first to defeat it through understanding. The Void Stalker made a soft sound, almost like it was agreeing with the Chancellor's words. Jake reached up and gently touched the creature's neck, feeling the warm pulse of life under its skin. But the question remains, the Chancellor said. What does this mean for your species? The trial was meant to test your worthiness to join the collective. Have you passed or failed? Jake looked up at the thousands of Xerians watching from the stands, then at the alien delegates on their platforms. Dr. Lisa Bennett was leaning forward, her hands clasped tightly together. Commander Vex was glowing so brightly that his crystal body looked like a star. Even the Morphians seemed more alert than usual. I think, Jake said carefully, that depends on what you value most. If you value only the ability to kill, then maybe I failed. But if you value the ability to understand, to make peace, to find solutions that help everyone, then maybe I passed. The Chancellor nodded slowly. And what do you think we should value? Jake thought about the question for a moment. I think the galaxy is big enough for all of us to share, he said. There are so many worlds out there, so many different kinds of life. We could spend forever learning from each other, helping each other grow, but only if we choose cooperation over conquest. The Void Stalker moved closer to Jake, and Jake realized that the creature was listening to every word. Its intelligence was clear in its eyes, and Jake wondered how long it had been forced to pretend to be just a mindless predator. The collective has always believed that strength comes from victory in battle, the Chancellor said. But you have shown us a different kind of strength. The strength to choose mercy when you could choose violence. The strength to offer friendship to an enemy. Jake looked at the Void Stalker. It was never my enemy, he said. It was just doing what it had to do to survive. We all are. The Chancellor walked closer until he was standing right in front of Jake. Up close, Jake could see the scars on the alien's armor, evidence of countless battles. This was a being who understood violence, who had lived his entire life by the rules of combat. Jake Morrison of Earth, the Chancellor said formally, you have passed the trial. But more than that, you have taught us something new. You have shown us that there are kinds of strength we had not considered. The crowd of Xerians erupted in cheers. The sound was deafening, echoing off the stone walls of the amphitheater. Jake felt a wave of relief wash over him. He had done it. Humanity would be welcomed into the galactic community, but the Chancellor was not finished. He raised his hand for silence, and the crowd gradually quieted down. However, the Chancellor said, your trial has raised new questions. If the Void Stalker is truly intelligent, as you have shown us, then what does that mean for how we have been using it? What does it mean for all the creatures we have used in our trials? Jake felt the Void Stalker tense beside him. The creature's blue patches flickered with what Jake now recognized as anxiety. It was afraid of what might happen next. I think, Jake said carefully, that maybe it's time to change how the trials work. Instead of forcing creatures to fight. For your entertainment, maybe you could find other ways to test new species? Ways that don't require anyone to suffer. The Chancellor was quiet for a long moment. That would mean changing traditions that are thousands of years old, he said. Sometimes, Jake said, the best traditions are the ones that can grow and change with the times. Commander Vex stood up on his platform and spoke in his musical voice. The human is right, he said. We have all learned something today. The Zelfani people formally request that the collective consider new trial methods. Hive Speaker Zix also stood, her compound eyes reflecting the arena lights. The Kithara agree, she said in her many-voiced way of speaking. Intelligence should be valued over violence. Even the Morphians nodded their gray heads in agreement. Jake realized that his actions had affected more than just the Xerians. All the alien species present were reconsidering their assumptions about strength and worth. Dr. Bennett was crying again. But this time they were tears of joy. He's not? Just saving humanity, she said to no one in particular. He's helping to save everyone. The Chancellor looked around the arena, taking in the reactions of all the different species. This will require much discussion, he said. But change is not always a bad thing. Perhaps it is time for the collective to grow. Jake felt the void. Stalker nudged him gently with its head. When he looked at the creature, he saw something new in its eyes. Hope. For the first time in its life, it might have a chance to be something other than a weapon. What about him? Jake asked, gesturing to the Void Stalker. What happens to him now? The Chancellor looked at the creature thoughtfully. That is a good question. The Void Stalker has served the collective for many years, but always as a prisoner. If it is truly intelligent, then it deserves to choose its own path. The creature made a soft sound and moved closer to Jake. Its meaning was clear. It wanted to stay with the human who had shown it kindness. I think, Jake said, that it has already chosen. The Chancellor smiled, an expression that transformed his stern features. Then it shall be so. The Void Stalker is free to go where it wishes. The crowd cheered again, but this time it was different. There was more joy in the sound, less bloodthirsty excitement. Jake realized that the Xerians were not naturally cruel. They had just been following traditions that no one had ever questioned before. As the ceremony continued, Jake found himself thinking about the future. Humanity had been accepted into the galactic community, but more importantly, they had helped to change it for the better. The trials would be different now, more focused on wisdom and cooperation than on violence and conquest. Dr. Bennett joined him on the arena floor, along with the other members of the human delegation. She was still crying, but she was also smiling. "You did it," she said. "You really did it." Jake looked at the Void Stalker, who was now surrounded by curious Xerians, who wanted to see the creature up close. For the first time, they were looking at it not as a weapon, but as a living being. "We all did it," Jake said. "Even him, especially him." The twin suns were setting now, casting long shadows across the arena. Jake knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new questions about humanity's place in the galaxy. But for now, he was content to stand in the arena with his new friend, watching the different species learn to see each other in a new light. The Void Stalker nuzzled against Jake's shoulder, and Jake smiled. Sometimes the best victories were the ones where nobody had to lose. Sometimes the greatest strength was knowing when not to fight. And sometimes the most important thing you could do was show someone else that they were not alone. The trial was over, but the real work was just beginning.